Hey everyone, let's finish off the week one topic with some discussion around product vision and feature mapping. So we're going to actually talk about now that we have our team, what is the product that we're working on? How do we actually define that and scope out that space? And how do we map some features and how do we name sort of the different pieces of our product vision and turn it into something that maybe developers can start to use? Let's start this discussion with looking at a few specific artifacts, specifically non-technical artifacts. So when we start a project up, as we know, need some kind of an idea, some kind of a vision. And this often in the real world will come from people that maybe aren't so technical, right? So it might come from uh, business or a manager level set of individuals, or it might come from, a community. Business requirements come from community needs, and they're not going to be in the form of technical language, right? There's no technical jargon. There's no technical level of specification. They just say, I need an app that's going to help me be more productive, right? So we're missing that gap from somebody coming to you and saying, I need an app that's going to make me more productive, and actually developing that app. And we have this idea of these non-technical artifacts that help bridge that gap. So we have three. We have the product vision, we have features, and we have user stories. And even though user stories has the word user in it, please note that these still fall under this idea of non-technical artifacts. We're not going to talk technically just yet. This whole video, non-technical. So the first thing we typically start with, of course, would be a vision. And if we're not sure why we're going to start with a vision, um, because without one, we're just building a bunch of screens. Like we don't really have a goal, right? We don't know what the overarching 10,000 foot view vision is of the product that we're building. So a vision statement is kind of a user-centered North Star. It reminds us what we're trying to work toward, what at the very end of all of this we're hoping to get out of it. So we always start with building our product out from a vision statement. A vision statement has a few key characteristics associated with it, and the first being the purpose of the product. This is a what, not a how. What does the product do? Not how does it do it? So it will help me be more productive. It will help me track reminders. It will help me organize deadlines, right? These are things that my product can do, not how I'm going to achieve doing those things. And again, when I say how, it's not like I want to be more productive and this app is going to make me more productive by tracking reminders. That's not a how, right? That's still user-centered behavior-based, what it can do in order to achieve that goal, not technically, implementationally, how are we going to do those things? Very different. Uh, Typically, we like to start our user state or our vision statements, pardon me, off with truly a statement, a single sentence. And then we can start to build it out. So when you submit your vision statement in this course, it shouldn't be a single sentence. It's going to be a little bit bigger than that. But it's always good to just start with what, right? What is it that we want to build? If we use the example of my application that I built for my kids, I started with, I really need something that will help my daughter feel assured at night that there's no monsters in her room. That was my vision statement, was I needed something that was going to solve that problem for me. And then from there I could build out my vision statement with information such as, whoop, right here. What does the project accomplish? What is its value, right? So what does it accomplish? Well, it did accomplish making sure that my daughter, who was scared of monsters under her bed, could go to sleep feeling like there was no monsters under her bed. It also accomplished the ability to slowly expose her to the idea of things maybe aren't always completely pristine, but we're going to be okay. Because I did end up adding in this idea of a sensitivity bar and being able to allow some monsters through, but not all, and friendly monsters. And as it built out, that's what it ended up being. But that's not where it started. So what does it accomplish? It does accomplish that goal. And it also accomplishes the goal of kids who think monsters are cool, they get to interact with them too. What's its value? Its value can stem from child development in psychology. Its value can stem from exposure therapy and helping kids overcome their fears, and also a parent not having to stay in their child's room for 3 hours because their kid is scared of the dark. That was my value in myself. And then, of course, our success criteria. Now, success criteria can always be a tricky one. We're made for our project, we're just going to make up success criteria. Like it's not going to be actually things that we can achieve in this class. But they should be measurable, they should be quantitative. We should be able to tell you how we're going to get those things. And they should be realistic within the scope of our project. So for my project, for example, of my monster, it was called Monster Buddy, for my Monster Buddy application, very measurable success criteria. The overall time spent, reassuring my child at bedtime that she was safe in her room and that there was no monsters went down by like 50%, right? And so I was able to take a measurement of at the start of before I made the application, why am I in her room for 2 hours at a time? And then at the end, after I use the app for a week or 2 weeks or a month, I can pick a measurable amount of time. I can say after using the application for a month, 50% of users reported that their bedtime routine has gone down at least 50% in length, right? So it depends on the application, but we really take our developer hat off, we put our user hat on. What is this product? Who is it serving? And given that information, how can we measure that it's doing exactly that? And so that's going to be our success criteria. Unrealistic success criteria include things that are really overly analytical or overly specific, like saying that we're going to request a series of surveys from our clients over the course of 6 months, right? It needs to be something that we can sort of realistically track or passively collect from our clientele, from our users. And it can't be like, in the first month, I'm going to make $50 million, right? Like that's not going to be realistic. So it does need to sort of have some intuition and thought behind what we're going to call our success criteria for our projects. And of course, in real life. So here is my example vision statement for my Monster Buddy application. So Monster Buddy is a playful and comforting bedtime tool designed for young children who want to face their nighttime fears with a smile. By transforming the bedtime routine into an imaginative adventure, Monster Buddy provides reassurance, fun, and connection between parents and kids. With its interactive monster profiles, lighthearted scanning feature, and encouraging goodnight messages, Monster Buddy builds confidence and creativity in kids while making a bedtime a joyful experience. Success will be measured by creating happier, more relaxed bedtime routines for families, with a goal of 95% satisfaction rate from parents and kids reporting fewer bedtime struggles. Now, this is a little bit short, it's a little bit vague in places, but it does give us the general idea of what we're looking for in a vision, like a beginning vision statement. It's not long enough. Fewer bedtime struggles isn't really quantitative enough, right? I don't really have a deadline put in here to say, yes, I've been successful, but it is a reasonable starting place to see that I'm listing my overarching features. What can my application do? Who am I serving? What is the goal, right? Asking ourselves those kinds of questions allows us to sort of build out a vision statement. Here's an example of a significantly and more obviously terrible vision statement. Monster Buddy is an app that helps kids not be scared of monsters at night. It uses advanced radar simulation scanning technology, ooh, with a spelling mistake no less, to show monsters that are fun and nice. Parents will like it because it makes bedtime easier. Success is measured in happy kids who are relaxed at bedtime, right? So certainly, there's nothing wrong with this being a starting place, but this isn't a polished, finished vision statement because all of this needs to be expanded and organized differently. I can't tell you whether or not you'll be allowed to use generative AI tools when building out your vision statement because it depends who your professor is, right? And it depends what the rules are when you're going out to work on it. But you always want to make sure that no matter whether you're using some kind of assistive technology or not, when building out these kinds of sentences, that they're hitting those questions that you want to be asking. So even if you are using it, it still needs to be in a language that makes sense for your users, right? If we're looking at moms and dads and grandmas and grandpas who are putting stressed out kids to bed and frantically searching their phone to find something that will get their kid just to chill out, what kind of language do we want to use that's going to draw them in to use our application? Advanced radar simulation scanning technology does not, right? Spelling mistakes do not. Fun and nice are my only adjectives. Like That's not enough information, right? So we really want to try and get in the head of our user, try and put ourselves in their shoes and see what we can come up with. Now, a lot of this design truly is an iterative design, right? So we started with one sentence, and then I gave you some what makes it successful, what is the goal, who are we serving, how do we serve those people using this tool, keeping our language in non-technical terminology, right? So we're really starting with a sentence, building it out to a few sentences, and then expanding on each of those sentences into like a page or a paragraph or multiple paragraphs until we have a finished vision statement. And I take this iterative sort of design to solving problems and generating work quite seriously. Everything I do in my life is pretty agile. Um, but it makes a lot of sense, this iterative design, starting from just one piece of information and layering on top of it until we get somewhere more complicated. It's exactly how I teach first years to approach their code too. So we're going to continue with that theme, and we're going to go from our vision statement, we're going to layer on top of our vision statement this idea of features. So now that we have this vision statement, if we go back to my vision statement here, I said that we're going to have interactive monsters, we're going to have like monster profiles, we're going to have encouraging goodnight messages, you're going to be able to see it scan the room, right? These are things that I'm telling you what my application can do. So what would a user need to fulfill this vision? What are some things that they're going to need? Well, they're going to need to be able to scan the room. There's going to have to be some kind of way to actually simulate a scan of the room that feels like kind of real. We're going to need to have more than just one monster that always appears if monsters do appear, right? So we're going to have some kind of monster messaging. And kids are really smart. Maybe pick something that's in your domain. If you don't have kids or don't work with kids, it might not be the right domain for you. But I have two kids. So for me, I know that if my app would have spit out the same goodnight message every single time, they would have been like, this is stupid and doesn't really work, and I think it's fake. So I had to have enough that my kids would sort of not run into the same, like the likelihood of running into the same one repeatedly wasn't gonna, like a low likelihood, right? I had to have some kind of way to ensure that they thought it was real because seemed dynamic enough. There was enough randomness, right, to it. So what are some things that I might have needed in order to achieve this vision of happy bedtimes and happy children? I needed that scanning feature. I needed lots of different profiles. I needed lots of different good night messages. So let's take a look. This is the idea of features, right? So our user or our client defines the capabilities of the software that work toward the vision. And people really struggle with this because they often think the very first thing that their application needs is to be able to log in, right? I need to be able to log in to store my information. And again, it really depends on your application. Maybe it does need login, but you have to try and take that developer hat off. I need like hats while I'm doing this. Take that developer hat off, put on the hat that says I am like the stressed out mom. Do I really want to have to sign in? Am I saving any information that requires me to sign in? Am I storing information anywhere other than on the cell phone itself? Right. So in my application, I don't connect to a database that would require like any kind of cloud storage or anything. Like everything is on memory device saving storage. If you switch devices, it's gone. I don't save it anywhere else. I don't need login. There's no reason for it for me. If I want to be able to save something to my phone and then access it on my computer, now all of a sudden maybe a login is needed so that we know that the same person is accessing the same information, right? These features that we're talking about, these capabilities that the user might define, these are things that need to be ideally completable within one iteration. Typically, when we're talking about these, we say our features should be anywhere from 3 to 5 business days. That's how long a feature should, I mean, 5 to 7 business days is how long a feature should take to complete. 5 to 7 business days for one feature. We're going to break these ideas down even smaller soon, but for right now, this overarching idea, from where we're sitting, can it be done within one iteration, within 5 to 7 working business days? Implementing AR holographic monsters that will dance on the child's bed, that's not a feature that could be completed in one business or in 5 to 7 business days, right? But maybe opening an app that tells good night, encouraging good night messages is something that could be completed within that time frame. So as a client, as a user, your job is to write a feature and assign it a priority. What is the most important thing that you need done in order for this application to be functional for you? Because those are the things you want developers to work on first. Again, that AR holographic 3D monster view, I don't need that. It's cool. It sounds great. I'm excited for it one day maybe, but I don't need that. What I need is my app to be open, push a button, pretend to scan the room and say, no monsters, go to bed, kid, right? So that's what I need. And if you're asking me to write a feature, I know exactly which one is going to be my highest priority feature, and it's going to be that one. So your user and client hats are, when you put those hats on, you're writing your features, you're assigning them a priority. Priorities are typically listed high, medium, and low priority. And then you switch hats. Then we put our developer hat on and we look at it and we go, well, what are my strengths? What do I know about solving this problem right now? I know what I know about solving the problem of opening an application and it generating a surprise good night message, right? Do you know what that takes? You may, but you also may not, and that's okay. And that's when that discussion might have to come in so that you can actually assign a reasonable time estimate to a feature. So let's take a look at a reasonable feature. Monster scanning, right? My top priority, most important one here. Cost 7 days, highest priority. A child is nervous at bedtime and wants to check if there's any monsters in their room. They open the app, tap the scan button, and they're going to watch for the animation to search the room. The app will say, all clear, everything's okay. Or it'll show friendly monsters that they can say goodnight to. That even makes the feature a little bit too long. It should have just said, the app reassures them with an all clear message and they go to bed. So we're going to provide children with a comforting and engaging experience that alleviates their bedtime fears while having a little bit of fun. Here is my not so good feature. I don't know anything about 3D monster graphics and animations. That's so outside the scope of things I know right now in my career, in my educational journey. Children see moving around and they can interact with them. This is going to take me forever, right? 45 plus days. That's like more than 8 weeks of work. Because I have no idea. Like I have no idea what this would need. We can see it's a really bad feature because the cost is way too high. And if for some reason this felt that important to the user, I also made sure that, as a mom, I'm like priority low. It's cool. It sounds awesome. Maybe it'd be fun. Um, but it's not as important to, getting that minimum product completed. Again, developer comes in, looks at this and is like, if this was a high priority for you, if a client came to me and told me this was a high priority for them, I would say, go find another developer. I can't do this in your timeline. This is going to take me 45 plus days, right? So them telling me the priority of the feature allows me to decide if this is something I can feasibly do. Once you have a bunch of features, we can start to group things together. And sometimes this is really important because we're going to brainstorm tons of features, and it's possible that these need to be grouped somehow and broken into smaller pieces, or maybe grouped into something bigger because we came up with a bunch of little ideas. So here we can see that we have this idea of like routine and positive reinforcement, right? Where we have those good night messages. Maybe we have monster badge rewards. We have bedtime routine checklists that could be in here. All of these things have to do with routine and positive reinforcement. Over here, we have some kind of soothing and sleep support. So maybe calming sounds and lullabies can come from my application. Maybe there's a nightlight control so that they can be part of the journey of looking for monsters. And then we have that bedtime fun and interactive where we had this idea of monster scanning. They might have profiles. Maybe each monster has a story associated with them, or maybe some of them can like send the kid a message. So all of these are different features associated with bedtime fun and interaction. That doesn't mean they all have the same priority, but grouping them together allows us to get a better idea of how we want to organize things. Once we've done that, we can really start to talk about prioritizing our features. Now we have this idea of MVP, which stands for minimum viable product. What is the minimum amount of stuff that we can add in that would call this a product that we could send out into the world and say, this does useful things, right? What are the must-haves? What are the we needs right away? So for me, it was going to be that scanning monster mode. And then because I really needed the all clear sign. And then after that, I decided I wanted to be able to have some monsters. So then we had the monster profiles come in and so on and so forth. And we have the minimum viable product, the few things I need, and then my stretch goals. I'll tell you right now that in my Monster Buddy application, I have made it as far as minimum viable product number 2. So 3 through 5 have not happened in the MVP, and stretch goals 1 through 5 are not even on the horizon for my application. And it has been in the App Store for just over a year at the time of making this video. So we can see that minimum viable product must have launch first. Doesn't necessarily mean you're going to even finish it in this class. That's been a year for me. But what here was going to be the biggest, what here was going to be the trickiest, but I knew I really needed it. That was going to be what I picked first. So I didn't really know how to handle monster scanning mode, but I knew I was going to need it. Monster profiles seemed the easiest to me, honestly, to do from my MVPs. Just because it was going to be all hard-coded data basically, but it wasn't enough on its own to be meeting my product vision, right? So we really want to have those conversations with our teammates to figure out what that priority order should look like. Once you have done all of that, you have your vision statement and you have this idea of these features. The next thing we need to look at is how are we actually going to build this, right? How do we translate our product vision and our features into a system that we can build and deliver? So we do this in a few different ways. We have diagrams, we have modules, and we have release planning. So diagrams are things like how do we actually visualize the system we're building? We do a little bit of this in this class. A lot more of it happens in 4350 and computer or software engineering 2, the advanced version of this course. But there's nothing that stops you from doing these visualizations and drawing out these connections as part of your development of your product. The next piece here is modules, right? So what are the building blocks? What are the feature areas? What are the boundaries of our project? What is that minimum viable product and the scope of it? Turns out that when I did this and I thought this was my minimum viable product, that was honestly a lie. I could have put a line right here. I really only have 2 things that made it minimally viable for me. And the rest were nice to haves, should haves at some point. And then lastly, of course, is the release planning. So how are we actually going to deliver value step by step? So we need to take the fact that we have 3 iterations in the term, or the deadline is this day, and figure out when are we actually going to work on these parts, or what parts are we going to work on when, so that we can ensure that we're delivering reasonable products with reasonable value at each step along the way. Okay, so it's a really daunting task, sort of iteration planning and roadmap planning and trying to figure all that stuff out. And I encourage you to spend as much time as you feel you have on that planning part of the project. If you remember in the very first video, I gave sort of little screenshots from things that advice from former students, one of them being spend time planning up front. It'll pay off in the long run. This is exactly what we're talking about. So take a moment, pause and reflect, write 2 to 3 sentences describing your team's product vision. If you don't have a product yet, think about the product you might want to deliver. And that's okay too, because it's still a good exercise to practice. What problem are you trying to solve? Why does this even matter? How does this product matter to that problem? And if you don't, like I said, if you don't have a product yet, just think about what you'd like and try and write a brief vision for it. Start yourself off there and see if you can start to iterate over that idea, building and expanding. You can do it on your own. You can do it with teammates. It's up to you kind of how you want to take this pause and reflect. But I encourage you to do it as it's a really good exercise for getting your brain in that brainstorming mode. With that, we have reached the end of our software development lifecycle, agile methodology, and non-technical artifact planning stages. Starting in our next video lectures, we're going to start talking about user stories, which I guess are still technically non-technical. But a little bit of the user stories, and then we get to finally start diving into some of the technical stuff, such as architecture diagrams, so actually building our system out, and the development of that system, so developer tasks. Getting into really the meat of beginning to build out our project. So with that, I'll say thank you so much for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye.